So if we go back to your original question about whose responsibility then is it to protect data, where do you fall on that?
So importantly, as a consumer, I'm increasingly realizing that number one, it has to start with me. As a parent, I'm realizing that I'm trying to do a better job of educating my children about privacy and data than my parents did. Not because my parents were bad, but they didn't have to face these issues.
Challenges.
Yeah, and actually studies have shown, when they've looked at morality and decision-making psychology, young people today are very similar in their stances on moral decision-making in almost every regard, except for one. And the one big difference today versus, say, 1 or 2 generations ago is the perception of privacy. And young people today do not have the same standard or high regard for privacy because they've grown up on a stage. It's a public stage, right? Every day it's Instagrammable, and if you didn't click it, it didn't happen. And so we've given up so much of our own privacy that it's no longer even perceived as a moral issue anymore because there is no other option in their mind. So I think it definitely starts with the consumer. So I'm going to flip this around on you, though, because from an Apple perspective, Apple's business model now, publicly, from a marketing perspective, is, hey, buy our products because we don't sell your data, right? And this is in part true because a lot of their revenue model is based on the hardware that they produce, right?
Yep.
So do you think that they actually care about data and they're using this as kind of a moral high ground? Or is it just that they know that they're making most of their revenue off the hardware anyway, and so this is just kind of a marketing ploy?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And to be honest, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. And certainly for Apple executives, I'm sure, they feel like they do perhaps have a moral high ground because of this experience that they had, and because currently their business model doesn't require them to monetize their data they have of users to send out to external sources by the nature of their business and their ecosystem in which users operate, because it's almost all within Apple.
Yeah, it's enclosed, yeah.
It's enclosed. And so at a certain point, if that business model changes, where their ability to take that moral high ground change, perhaps, the profit incentive can be really powerful for listed companies.
See, this is where I don't know. I struggle with this, and so my history, as you know, is I used to be Apple's outside counsel within Asia. They had a direct phone line to me when I was still working for my law firm, and I had a lot of close interaction with various people within Apple at the time that the iPhone, the iTouch, these things were first being introduced into Asia. And one of the things that immediately became apparent is that the profit margin was paramount. And the profit margin on the hardware at the time was well over 60%, right? I mean, just imagine, right? That's like cosmetics type of profit margin. And the interesting thing about Steve Jobs and the business model that he made is that it was fully self-contained because he wanted people in an ecosystem, so they essentially would
Just
have
use
to,
Apple products.
Yeah, because you have to give up a lot to leave that ecosystem, right? So whether it's the earbuds or what, all these things are like, they can only work within the Apple ecosystem. And so now, interestingly enough, you now have, say, the Android model, which is the exact opposite, which is like flood the market with these things as broadly as you can, open the software, etc.
And they don't care who the hardware.
They don't care who it is because their revenue model is based off of the selling of the data. And so I'm not so sure that Apple is altruistic or moral in this way. I think if they had built a model that could generate revenue in a way that's similar to Google while simultaneously maintaining the profit margins on their hardware, they've proven that the profit is paramount.
And so again, kind of to what I was saying, I think when kind of push comes to stuff, particularly for listed companies, publicly listed, traded companies, that profit motivation frequently overwhelms any kind of moral principles that CEOs and companies may espouse to, which is unfortunate. Now, we do see certain leaders now more and more taking on more of an activist approach, just beyond just their business, into certain aspects of political activism, having a voice when it comes to certain moral issues, which I think perhaps is a good thing. And I think it's necessary for such leaders to contribute that voice to these kind of debates in order for us as users, them as the producers of these products, and then at least as well as for governments to collectively try to think about how we can manage these issues around data and protecting data.